fellow woodworkers, and welcome to this garage workshop and the second video in the series on making a frame for my running medals. Let's get started. So the first thing to do was give them a coat of paint, and this is, as I said, I think I mentioned, this is the Princeton paint by B&Q. It's in their sort of good home range. It's just really cheap, and as you can see, it was just a taster pot. The next thing to do was open up the pinholes that were already in this board, and I do want to say at this point, please do not use your table saw in this manner unless you are incredibly au fait with it. I'm actually using the router bit of it, but please don't do it. So I drilled the holes in, and then all I did was literally feed it in one hole, slide it along until it matched the other hole, and that would give me some slits which later on I would be able to cover in felt. And these were going to be the bits where the ribbon of the medals would pass through. So having very carefully did one, I then drilled out the holes knowing that it worked, and I left roughly the same amount of space. It wasn't an equal number of holes, but I left roughly the same amount of space on the top and the bottom, and I can always adjust by how much ribbon of the medal sort of goes through, if you see what I mean, if I'm having issues with the height. So having done that, I just literally replicated the same process and ran them through on the second side. Very easily done, and as you can see, quite safe, so please be careful if you do that. Then I just knocked off the sort of shiny edge of this board, because obviously one side it's very rough, but the other side it's really shiny, so I just knocked that back, and that was really to give a key for the contactless adhesive to stick to. I then went back to the wood, which was dry, and I put the coat in, and what you can see me doing there, which was a big mistake, I didn't paint the inside of the groove, and later on you'll see it. So then I got the board, and this is actually the shiny side. I applied the contact adhesive. It's just a basic one. Waited until it had gone tacky, and then I stuck the green felt. Now I overlapped this here, and I wasn't sure if you'd see this on the final thing. It was a risk I sort of took, really. I tried to cut it as straight as I can, but I just couldn't. And I don't know, I didn't know whether you'd see it or not, but I'm pleased to say that when it's actually in the final frame, you can't see it. I just put some more contact adhesive around the edge, and then I was able to just fold over those sort of slightly flappy bits and get them to stick. I did just add a couple of bits of tape. These aren't still on there. It was just where the felt didn't seem to be adhering properly, even though, I mean, it had tons of contact adhesive, which you could see yourself, but especially when it was doubled over, it wasn't very good. So I just added it, and then I left it to dry for a good old amount of time once I'd remembered to cut the corners off, which of course is very important. So I gave it plenty of time to dry, and then I moved on to the wood for the outside frame. Again, this is exactly the same timber that I used on the inside, and I actually used it as a template. I just sort of wanted to make some very basic markings. I went back to the miter saw, cut a miter in one edge to give me a sort of good starting point, and having marked it really well, I flipped it over, which is really important, obviously, and then I cut the other edge. So I just offered it up to make sure it fitted, and it did. And at this point, I just used I hadn't cut that down at this point. I just wanted to make sure that the angles were right on the miter, which fortunately they were, and it all went together really well. So I was super pleased with that, because obviously it could have gone wrong, and there was just an offcut, so I was trying it on the other side. I did find, I put it in upside down, which obviously didn't help, but I did find a slight incline, sort of inward bit on the other side, but not too much. Then it was just a case of marking these two bits down, because obviously I'd sort of cut with a little bit of excess, which I didn't need. So then I ran it through the miter saw and got the right size. Now these are little hole dowel punches. I've mentioned these before in one of my Parkside reviews. So I just drilled the holes that you saw in the previous video. I popped them in, and then I laid it on top of the piece of wood exactly where I wanted it to sit, and literally all it does is just put a little dent in the wood, particularly softwood like this. I could have pushed it down really and got the dent, and as I just gave it a little bit of a knock just to get it sort of enough through, that I could see where to drill the holes. And then I went back to the drill and put the dowel holes in. I made them slightly deeper this side than I had the other side, and also off camera, I don't think I caught it, but I did I sliced the dowels down a little bit. I took about 4mm, I think, off the dowels because they didn't need to be as long as they were, and I just didn't want to have the issue of trying to put it together and then being too big. So I did sort of knock them down off of camera. First time I've used my bench drill press in a while, and I was pleased it worked really well. So then I just hammered them in, and this was a dry fit. Very happy with how it looked. Nice and strong and no issues. So from that point then I knew I could go on and replicate exactly the same procedure on both of the sides. Again, I didn't have any problems here. The measurements were all pretty good. Slightly off on the other side, but to be honest with you, it's sort of hidden by the frame. So at this point I'd got the two bits together and used them as a template, so I had it all matching, and I laid it all out, and as you could see it was absolutely fine. So again, same procedure. I put on the little markers and hit it with a wood to get the marks in, and just replicated exactly what I'd done before. And at this stage I was able to stick up the sort of inner frame. I stuck it together. Originally I was just going to use wood glue, but when I sort of stuck it on, I wasn't happy with how strong the wood glue was. So I got my nail gun out and just literally slipped a couple of 15mm air gun nails into it. Then when I had that one side, that was a sort of template I was going to use from everything else. I've pushed the glass, and you can see the wood did move slightly there. That worried me a bit, so actually I just tacked some screws in. Then the inner frame that you saw earlier, and obviously this was all going to be fixed in, so at this point I had to get it exactly right. So then I put on the sort of lid, the top bit, and clamped it all up. And again here I wasn't super happy with the strength, so I just dropped a couple of screws in it, just pre-drilled and dropped a couple of screws in. When that was done, I could then construct the outside, which, as you can see, when I got them the right way round, fitted really nicely. Actually, I was very pleased with how it went. So I just glued the whole thing up, and my plan for this was to clamp it and then clamp the individual sections. So obviously that clamps all the way across from front to back, as it were, or side to side. So that's got that clamp in, but obviously then there's the case that the wood may buckle. So to do that, I just literally got a couple of my smaller one-handed clamps, you can just see them there, and sort of clamp the wood together. So when the final unclamping, I actually left this for 2 days to dry properly. When it finally clamped, I was really pleased with how it looked. There was only one little edge there you could see that needed to be knocked off, but it was really good. So then I went for a really nice clean of the glass on the inside, because obviously that glass wasn't, that's the last it's going to be used, because the felt will be in there. So I took my time and did a really nice clean on the inside of the glass, and then I offered up the felt, and I was a bit nervous about whether or not this would fit, but it actually was perfect. It was even a little bit tight, so you can see, very happy about that. The next stage was just to mark out the felt. So I started with a scalpel and thought, no, I'm going to need a little bit more of a straight edge. So I literally just cut a slit edge to edge all the way through. The plan wasn't to cut them out. I literally just wanted a slit. That's all I wanted. I didn't want anything else. I didn't want to take that out or cut it back or strip it or anything like that. I just literally wanted a slit so that when you put the ribbon through, it's got a little bit of purchase on it, you know, potentially. So when I did all of that, I just poked the holes through to make sure they're all okay. I was then able to actually use one of the medals to see how it looked, and I was very pleased. When I poked the ribbon through, it went through no problem, and actually it was a little bit of resistance against the medal. I'm going to have to think about how I do the ribbons at the back, but you can see there how it's going to look when it's finished with one medal in it. So very pleased with that, and it actually worked exactly as I thought it was going to be. The only thing was I noticed literally a couple of gaps about 1 mil wide on a couple of the edges, so I just got out some ready-made wood filler and just popped a little bit on, I actually ended up doing 3 of the 4. This is the opposite corner, you can see. I actually ended up doing 3 of the 4, just a tiny little bit on each of them. Then I went to the DeWalt sander that I had, and I wanted to take back quite a bit as the sort of shininess of this material, because obviously it was going to be painted, and I wanted to make sure that, you know, there was a good key for it to happen. I then popped on the paint. When I painted the outside, I put some painter's tape in the inside and just painted the inside edge, and the project was finished. I'm super, super happy with how it turned out. Really, really good quality product. Okay, so fellow woodworkers, we've come to the end of the project, and here is the finished metal frame. As you can see, it looks pretty good. I'm not going to lie, I think originally I was going to get away with just putting 1 coat of paint on it, but looking at it, I've got a little bit of paint left, so I think I'll give it another coat. But in terms of how it looks, I'm really, really pleased. It's turned out exactly as I wanted, stroke hoped it would. I mean, for me, I'll be very happy to put this on the wall in my house, which is where it will be going. As you can see, I've just put one of the medals in just to check. I'm not actually going to put all the medals in until I finished all of the painting, but I'm really, really pleased with how it's turned out. It's exactly as I imagined it in my mind when I started the build. And as you will have seen, using the wood dowels, using the miters, there's quite a lot of skills involved in this that I haven't really done on, or certainly not done on the channel before, but a lot of things I haven't sort of really done before, and I was sort of doing it on the fly. So I'm even happier that I've actually produced something that I would say is definitely the standard that I could display inside. A couple of things when I went through the back miters on the sort of original frame, I did just pop a couple of screws in. I think they would have been fine with the glue, to be honest, but just to be safe, and obviously you're never going to see them because they're behind the sort of border, outside border frame. So that was one of the things. The only thing I should have done, which I realise now, and you can't see it when you're sort of head on, and hopefully you can't see it, but just where the track, where the glass is, I should have painted that grey. Obviously I left it the original wood colour, and now if you sort of look at it either up or down, it's not directly face on. You can in places see the wood. So that's the only real thing that I would change if I was doing it again. But apart from that, I'm really, really happy with how it's turned out. And I'm also glad that I split this video into 2, because I think there was quite a lot and it would have got lost in one. So if you've watched the first one, and I'll put a link in the description, thank you so much. And if you stuck with it, I hope you agree with me that it was A, worth watching, and B, a really nice final project. So that's it for this week's edition of the Garage Workshop. If you are a first-time viewer, please can I ask you to subscribe, like and comment. Also, if you know other people that might like the channel, please spread it around. We're trying to grow the channel to 1,000. Hopefully we're about 750, I think, as I make this. So thank you so much for watching. If you are a regular viewer, thank you so much for watching, not just this, but all my other videos. Thank you so much for the regular comments that I get, and also for all of the feedback. So if you are a regular viewer, please don't forget to also like, comment. Let's get that YouTube algorithm working, shall we? Join me on next week's video when I'll be making something else in the Garage Workshop. Have a fantastic week, fellow woodworkers. Bye-bye.